I'ma keep winning, winning. I'ma keep winning, winning. Ooh. I'ma keep winning, winning. You can try to save yourself, but you only.
What's going on, guys? JK, I'm back with another video. Today, I'm going to be giving you my initial reactions to the two Saturday NFL wildcard games, starting off the playoffs. Before we get into it, please make sure you like the video and leave a comment down below with anything that you agree, disagree on, and subscribe to the channel for future NFL content that I'm going to be delivering. So, starting out here, the first game at 4:30 when that started out the whole NFL wildcard weekend is the Houston Texans versus Chargers. I think this game was very surprising to a lot of people. I think most people, including myself, ended up taking the Chargers and expected them to be able to get their run game going and kind of be able to control the game, control the clock, play Jim Harbaugh football in the playoffs, and him kind of make a little bit of a run here until they played the Chiefs next week. But after watching the game, if you ended up watching it at all, the box score indicates a totally different game that went the opposite way. The Chargers did start out hot. They started out with a 6-0 lead. They ended up going to get a field goal. They started out first play on defense. They ended up getting a fumble back from the Texans. The Texans did make their fair mistakes, but as you can see here in the box score, one of the biggest differences, if you look right here, is the 4 interceptions that Justin Herbert has thrown. He threw for 242 yards, although he had a less than a 50% completion percentage, and he had a total of 4 interceptions. Now, all those aren't his fault, but I would say about 2 or 3 of them are his fault, and there's only one of them. One of them should have been caught by the receiver. It pretty much just hit him right in the chest, bounced up, and it was picked off by Derek Stingley going down. But this was kind of a shocking game that took place. As you can see here, the Chargers, who Jim Harbaugh, known for his run game style that's just going to impose its will in the game, never really got going. It only had 50 yards rushing for the whole team, which is a pretty shocking feat. Lad McConkey ended up going off, having a good game. He's going to be a problem next year as a sophomore, coming off his rookie year, having almost 200 yards with the 89-yard touchdown pass where he pretty much just went over and got it. You could see they had one fumble. They had a couple turnovers in there from the Texans. But I think the main story was after the Texans started out slow, they ended up pulling it back together and kind of just gained the momentum and never gave it back to this point. You can see right here, first quarter, they don't score at all. It's 6-0. And then they end up starting to force these turnovers and then they capitalize on them. It's 10-6 at halftime. That was pretty much the Chargers went 3-and-out, and then they go down and get a field goal. CJ Stroud didn't have a crazy game. He did what he needed to end up winning. He struggled at first, throwing that first interception. That was just a terrible ball. He had 282 yards. I think the biggest story here is how they were able to control the game. Pretty much what we thought the Chargers were going to do, the Texans pretty much did with Joe Mixon. Joe Mixon had his 106 yards, 1 touchdown. He went crazy. He was named the MVP of this game. And he pretty much controlled this for the Houston Texans. D'Amico Ryans, they pretty much came in with their game plan. They played their defense that they are supposed to. He has his defense game plan always in check. Bobby Slowick, they came in and they can pretty much controlled it on the ground, kept the clock running, let the Chargers make their mistakes with their 4 interceptions, and they pretty much just capitalized it, going over and over, getting up rushing yards and controlling the clock and just kind of letting it run out. That was pretty much the biggest story of it. You see Nico Collins got his, but you can see here they tried to give it away at first. They really did. They didn't play fundamental football. They didn't look too great, even though they were struggling. They just pretty much gained momentum, and the Chargers could never give it back, and they kept just giving it to him, just turning the ball over with his 4 interceptions. And the Texans just pretty much slowly would capitalize on that. And that's pretty much the story of this game. And it leads to the Texans, I would say, most likely probably going to be playing the Chiefs and Arrowhead, depending on the results of these next couple games. So moving on to the Ravens versus Steelers game, that capped it off for Saturday night, started at 8 o'clock in Baltimore. Since the Chargers and Texans were kind of surprised, this Ravens Steelers game was not a surprise at all. It's kind of what we all expected would happen. I think the whole idea, honestly, that started this game and how it went was the Steelers really came out passive, honestly. if the Steelers wanted to have success, they had to control the Baltimore Ravens run attack, which they didn't do whatsoever if you're looking at the numbers. And they had to be able to control the ground as well and be able to run the ball with Najee Harris and Jalen Warren. And looking at it, Russell Wilson actually had a really good game. He threw for 270, 20 for 29, two touchdowns. But the biggest area here, if you look at the two rushing attacks, the Steelers came out very passive and weren't aggressive whatsoever. I think on one of their it was either the first or second drive, if I remember correctly. They came out, they got a first down the first one, and on their second time, they had a 4th and inches about on their own 35. And Mike Tomlin ends up punting it, not going for it. There was a lot of instances like this where Mike Tomlin had a chance to be aggressive in the first half, and it just didn't happen. And he made some very passive decisions. The team was playing very passive. And you could tell by the way they played, they didn't really have a sense of urgency. It was almost like they expected it to go this way, and they were just kind of going through the motion. And that leads to the box score here that happened with the Steelers only having 29 rushing yards compared to the Ravens almost 300 yards. They had 299. And the biggest story was the Derrick Henry, Lamar Jackson read option that took place. Lamar would be able to read the edge. Derrick Henry would either get it on the zone handoff or Lamar would keep it. How they defended it, TJ Watt was coming down. He was responsible for the running back coming down the edge. So he would pretty much tackle Derrick Henry, and the linebacker would have to scrape over top and be responsible for Lamar Jackson. And the linebacker, sometimes it was Patrick Queen, sometimes it was the other off ball linebacker, and they just were not quick enough to be able to get to Lamar Jackson. Sometimes they even had the safety try to come down and be able to help with it. But this results in Lamar having 81 yards. And Lamar pretty much just kept running and running in the first quarter. And then once he starts accumulating these, then they try to stop Lamar. And then they hand it off to Derrick Henry. That results in his 186 yards and two touchdowns. So it was pretty much just a run attack. How you would think the Steelers would have to come out and play. That's how the Ravens did. They were very aggressive. Their O-line was pushing off, creating the line of scrimmage, pretty much pushing the run attack to go. They had a franchise team record of 299 yards in the playoffs. And the O-line was pretty much just bullying the Pittsburgh Steelers defense line, which you wouldn't really think with Cameron Hayward, Alex Highsmith, TJ Watt, but I would have to give very good compliments to the Ravens offensive line because that was honestly one of their biggest weak points this year, and they had a great game. I think both offensive lines really had a great game. It's just that the Steelers were not aggressive. The the reason Russ was able to have such a good game, the Steelers offensive line too as well, was able to create clean pockets, and he didn't have too much pressure. He was sacked 4 times, but that was right towards the end of the game when they had to get super pass heavy. So the Ravens and the Steelers were going to be passing. So that leads to those sacks, but the Steelers offensive line just was not aggressive. They couldn't get the run game going at all. The biggest success that the Steelers had was in the second half, as you can see, both their touchdowns coming in the third quarter is when they start pretty much just chucking it deep. And it's like, F it, either George Pickens or Mike Williams is down there somewhere to be able to go catch this for a touchdown. And that's honestly what they needed to do to be able to win, in my opinion, because in the first half they tried to come out and they're typical Steelers. And that what they needed to do was really just let Russ cook, honestly, and just let him pretty much go air raid and take his shots and see if they could go out and make some plays. Compared to the Baltimore Ravens, who were just pretty much running it down their throat however they wanted and just doing whatever they wanted with this Pittsburgh Steelers front seven. Like at one point in the game, you could see one of the receivers for the Baltimore Ravens. I couldn't even tell you his first name was. He was the kick returner. He got one of them, and Mika Fitzpatrick, one of the best safeties in the NFL, comes down and tackles him, and he gets dragged for 5 yards, and then he ends up resulting in getting the first down and getting no help from the other Steelers defenders to come tackle him. It was pretty much just all effort at this point. It was effort and aggression, and the Steelers came out with none of it. Mike Tomlin was very passive with his decision making as head coach. Arthur Smith was very passive with his play calls until the second half, which resulted in them being able to open up their offense a little bit more. If you look at some of these more, all these pretty much Pittsburgh Steelers receivings were on deep balls from Russ, and they went up and just made a play on Marlon Humphreys or one of the corners. The Ravens, these were all kind of check downs or play actions that results in the tight end leaking out with Isaiah Likely and Mark Andrews hitting Nelson Aguilar over the middle, stuff like that. They did have one fumble on the very first punt return of the game. Their returner ended up muffing it, but they ended up recovering it. So there wasn't very many turnovers from either side, if there was any. It was pretty clean game turnover wise. It was just the Ravens pretty much bullying them and doing whatever they wanted by running the ball, with King Henry pretty much just taking over. The Ravens looked very good. They look very determined to pretty much make a run in this playoffs. It's going to be very interesting next week whenever they get. I'm going to predict that they get matched up with the Bills. It's going to be a very good game. It's going to be very tough for them, though, compared to the Chiefs, because the Ravens and Bills have to play each other in the second round. So whoever comes out of that game is probably going to be beaten up a little bit and then have to go play the Chiefs at Arrowhead in the AFC Championship. So it might be a little bit difficult there. But this game was pretty much what we expected overall. Ravens pretty much just came out, bullied them, did whatever they wanted. And the Steelers were pretty much too passive aggressive, almost like they expected that they weren't going to win this game, so that they were just trying to not get killed, and they were trying to keep the score close instead of playing to actually win the game. So that's pretty much my take on both these two games. The next couple of days, I'll have my reactions to the rest of the playoff games once they start. Once they're over, I'll have that out probably about Wednesday. So please make sure you comment your opinion on some of the stuff I talked about this game. And please make sure to subscribe to keep up with NFL content. Thank you for watching.
Yeah, feel like John Moran. Need a triple-double. Told him check the stats. Yeah, I got a couple. I don't drop the ball. Now I never fumble. I'm the MVP. Now I feel like Russell. Feel like John Moran. Need a triple-double. Told him check the stats. Yeah, I